Alex Eala walked onto Steffi Graf Stadium's grass on Tuesday afternoon as a wild card that almost nobody in the Berlin draw considered a serious threat. By Saturday evening, however, she left that same court as the player who had stunned the world number 2, eliminated a former Olympic semi-finalist, and kept an entire nation awake at 4 in the morning Manila time. In the span of just a few days, Eala produced a run that no ranking system could have forecast and no scouting report could have fully prepared for. Yet what makes this story so compelling, especially with Elise Mertens waiting for her in Bad Homburg on June 22nd, is not the fairy tale ending itself. It is the price that fairy tale demanded. To understand it, we have to go back 6 days. When the Berlin Open draw was released, Eala found herself placed in a section of the bracket that looked more like a punishment than an opportunity. Ranked number 35 in the world and entering as a wild card, she opened her campaign against Donna Vekic, fresh off her Queen's Club title and carrying a surge of grass-court confidence built over several weeks. Vekic possessed all the advantages on paper: greater height, superior power, a devastating serve capable of finding corners Eala could barely reach, and the pedigree of a Wimbledon semi-finalist from 2024. Everything pointed toward a difficult challenge for the young Filipina. But what followed would become one of the most remarkable runs of the season. On paper, this match was supposed to be a comfortable afternoon for the Croatian. It was anything but. From the third game onward, Alex Eala began displaying the quality that would define her entire week in Berlin. She refused to let Donna Vekic dictate the geometry of the rallies. Every time the Olympic silver medalist attempted to push her behind the baseline and stretch the court open with her powerful forehand, Eala responded by stepping inside the service line on returns and redirecting the angles with remarkable precision. Vekic earned an early break advantage, but Eala immediately fought her way back. When the Croatian broke again midway through the set, the Filipina answered once more, refusing to let momentum slip away. Then came the decisive surge. Eala rattled off 4 consecutive games to steal the opening set 7-5, stunning both her opponent and the crowd. The second set was more competitive, but by then the tone of the match had already been established. Eala remained composed under pressure and closed out a 6-4 victory. The spectators who had entered Steffi Graf Stadium expecting a routine victory for the higher-ranked player left talking about the 21-year-old from the Philippines whose efficiency of movement, court awareness, and fearless shot-making seemed years beyond her age. That was Tuesday. By Thursday, the challenge awaiting her had grown to an almost unimaginable level. Standing across the net in the round of 16 was Elena Rybakina, the world number 2 and one of the most formidable players in women's tennis. Rybakina had won 3 of the 4 biggest tournaments she entered in 2026. Her serve, regularly clocking above 115 miles per hour and occasionally touching 120, was widely regarded as one of the most dangerous weapons in women's tennis. She opened the match with 3 aces in her very first service game, sending an unmistakable message. By the end of the 4th game, she held a commanding 4-1 lead, and the expected script appeared to be unfolding. The wild card had enjoyed a respectable run. The wild card was about to go home. But Eala had other ideas. At 4-1, something shifted with Rybakina serving. Eala began picking up subtle clues in the ball toss a fraction earlier than before. It was not a dramatic adjustment, just enough to get her racket through the contact zone before the serve exploded off the grass. The change transformed the match. She broke serve, held to love, broke again, and then backed it up with a confident service game that included 2 aces of her own. Suddenly the scoreboard read 5-4, and the momentum had completely changed hands. For the first time all afternoon, Rybakina was no longer dictating play with complete freedom. She began pressing, forcing shots, and chasing lines that were not really there. Although she saved a set point in the 12th game, her 23rd unforced error ultimately handed Eala the opening set, and the atmosphere inside the stadium shifted instantly. Spectators who had arrived expecting a routine victory for the world number 2 were now leaning forward in their seats, captivated by the unfolding upset. Thousands of miles away, Filipino fans following the match in the early hours of the morning were suddenly wide awake. The second set featured less drama, largely because Eala's composure never wavered. She secured an early break in the second game and protected the advantage throughout. When Rybakina saved the first match point with a blistering forehand winner and helped serve to narrow the gap to 5-4, Eala was forced to serve for the match herself. Facing a tense 15-30 scoreline, she delivered what may ultimately be remembered as the defining shot of her 2026 season, a perfectly placed ace down the tee, struck with enough pace and movement to leave Rybakina reaching helplessly. 2 points later, it was over. A stunning 7-5, 6-4 victory was complete. It was later revealed that she immediately called her father, and she admitted to reporters that she was still shaking after the match. It was not an exaggeration. It was the reaction of a young player who had just produced one of the biggest wins of her career. The quarterfinal against Elise Mertens the following day carried a completely different emotional tone. Svitolina, a 31-year-old mother who returned to elite tennis after the birth of her daughter and amid the turmoil of war in her home country, does not intimidate opponents the way Elena Rybakina does. What she commands is something deeper: respect for her resilience, discipline, and relentless competitiveness. Few players in the history of women's tennis have been as stubborn as Svitolina. She has a unique ability to make opponents earn every single point and a remarkable talent for making matches feel physically and mentally exhausting. Against Svitolina, the danger was not being blown off the court by raw power. It was being gradually suffocated by consistency, defense, and pressure. Alex Eala never allowed that suffocation to take hold. She claimed the opening set 6-3 by showcasing a level of tactical sophistication her coaching team at the Rafa Nadal Academy had spent months developing. Throughout the set, Eala constantly varied the pace of her ground strokes, mixing penetrating flat drives with heavy topspin shots that forced Svitolina to repeatedly adjust her court positioning. Whenever the Ukrainian attempted to settle into her preferred rhythm of absorbing and redirecting pace, Eala changed the tempo. When Svitolina stepped forward to take time away, Eala responded with perfectly measured lobs or sharp-angled slices that sent her scrambling across the court. It was arguably the most tactically complete set of tennis Eala had produced in her professional career. The second set was far less orderly. Both players exchanged breaks multiple times, and there were stretches when neither seemed fully in control of the match. Yet as the battle wore on, Eala's athleticism became increasingly decisive. She consistently reached balls first, recovered more quickly between shots, and maintained a higher level of intensity during the crucial moments. When the final point was played, she had secured a 6-4 second set victory, and with it her third consecutive straight sets win over a seeded opponent in Berlin, sent her scrambling across the court. It was arguably the most tactically complete set of tennis Eala had produced in her professional career. The second set was far less orderly. Both players exchanged breaks multiple times, and there were stretches when neither seemed fully in control of the match. Yet as the battle wore on, Eala's athleticism became increasingly decisive. She consistently reached balls first, recovered more quickly between shots, and maintained a higher level of intensity during the crucial moments. When the final point was played, she had secured a 6-4 second set victory, and with it her third consecutive straight sets win over a seeded opponent in Berlin. Donna Vekic, Elena Rybakina, Elena Svitolina, all three defeated in straight sets. All three on grass. All three during Eala's Berlin debut. And all three at the hands of a player who had entered the tournament as a wild card. The statistics were becoming almost impossible to ignore. Eala's 5 career victories over top 10 opponents had all been achieved in straight sets, and 4 of those wins had come against players ranked inside the top 5. At just 21 years old, she was already building a reputation for something rare. When she found her highest competitive level, she rarely blinked. The pattern suggested a player who, once locked into the right rhythm and belief, possessed an extraordinary ability to maintain it under pressure. Berlin was no longer looking like a surprise run. It was beginning to look like evidence of something much bigger. And then Linda Noskova stepped onto the court for the semi-final, and suddenly every bit of Eala's accumulated momentum met its toughest obstacle yet. The 20-year-old Czech, ranked number 13 in the world, had already dismantled Eala's 6-2, 6-0 at Indian Wells 3 months earlier, and the memory of that defeat lingered over the match before the first ball was struck. Yet it was not the memory that defeated Eala this time. It was Noskova's serve. The Czech unleashed 5 aces in the opening set alone, and won 15 of her first 20 points behind her first delivery. Eala's return game, the very weapon that had unlocked Elena Rybakina and disrupted Elina Svitolina, could never quite find the same rhythm against Noskova. Her serve came through the grass flatter, lower, and faster than Rybakina's, aided by a compact service motion that gave Eala fewer clues to read. By the time she adjusted to the placement, the point was often already gone. The second set offered more resistance. Eala found a breakthrough in the 6th game and briefly moved ahead 4-3, creating a moment when the entire stadium began to wonder if another comeback was brewing. For roughly a dozen minutes, it felt as though the story might bend in her favor once again. But Noskova responded immediately, breaking back without hesitation, holding comfortably, and then securing one final break to close out a 6-2, 6-4 victory in just 69 minutes. The remarkable run was over. After the final handshake, Eala sat quietly in her chair with a towel draped over her head, barely moving as the reality of the defeat settled in. It was a painful ending, but it did little to diminish what she had accomplished throughout the week. Now, just 24 hours later, the focus shifts to Bad Homburg, where the first name on Eala's schedule is Elise Mertens, the Belgian veteran ranked number 24 in the world. It is a matchup loaded with uncomfortable reminders. Mertens defeated Eala 6-2, 6-1 in Madrid just 7 weeks ago. Before that, she earned a 7-5, 6-0 victory in Monastir in 2023. The head-to-head stands at 2-0 in Mertens' favor, and neither encounter remained competitive beyond the early stages. That reality raises a fascinating question. Was Eala's extraordinary Berlin run the beginning of a genuine breakthrough, or was it a contained burst of brilliance that ended the moment Noskova stopped it? Does a player who has just defeated the world number 2 carry that confidence into the following week? Or does a semi-final loss reset everything mentally? What makes the question even more intriguing is that Mertens herself has hardly looked unstoppable on grass this season. At Hertogenbosch 2 weeks earlier, she opened her title defense with a dominant 6-1, 6-2 win over Bianca Andreescu, looking every bit the experienced grass court specialist. But in the very next round, Elena Gabriela Ruse eliminated her 6-3, 6-3, exposing unexpected vulnerabilities. Her movement appeared hesitant, her timing inconsistent, and her normally reliable volleys frequently drifted long. Then came Berlin, where she survived a difficult 3-set battle against Ludmila Samsonova after dropping the first set 6-1, a scoreline that rarely reflects a player operating with complete confidence. For all of Mertens' experience and her dominant history against Eala, she enters Bad Homburg carrying questions of her own. And that is what makes this matchup so compelling. One player arrives searching for proof that her breakthrough is real. The other arrives trying to rediscover the form that once made her one of the most dependable performers on tour. Even in matches she ultimately wins, Elise Mertens has looked vulnerable at times. After battling through a difficult opening round victory, she was then dismantled by Bart Omkova, who cruised to a 6-1, 6-4 win and exposed several weaknesses in the Belgians' game. Suddenly, the narrative surrounding Mertens on grass this June appears far less intimidating than her ranking would suggest. Her career win percentage on grass hovers around 55%. Yes, she captured the Hertogenbosch title in 2025, but that event was played under conditions that perfectly complemented her style of tennis. Lower bouncing balls, tighter court geometry near the net, and opponents who struggled to consistently punish second serves. Bad Homburg presents a different challenge altogether. The courts play faster, the ball moves through the surface more aggressively, and matches often reward players who can generate their own pace. That reality matters because Mertens has never been a player who overwhelms opponents with raw power. Instead, she survives through precision, anticipation, and an almost uncanny understanding of court positioning. Few players on tour read the game as intelligently as she does. Her ability to recognize patterns, cut off angles, and place herself in the right position at the right time has carried her to countless victories throughout her career. But on grass, there are moments when intelligence alone can reach its limits. When the ball is skidding through the court at high speed, there are situations where shot-making and aggression become just as important as tactical awareness. That is where Alex Eala enters the equation. One of the defining features of her Berlin breakthrough was her return game. She disrupted the rhythm of bigger servers, took time away from opponents, and consistently turned service games into pressure situations. If she can reproduce even a portion of that level against Mertens, she possesses exactly the kind of weapon capable of testing the Belgians' biggest vulnerability. Mertens may still hold the advantage in experience and the comfort of a 2-0 head-to-head record, but the version of Eala that emerged in Berlin is not the same player she faced in Madrid or Monaster. The question now is whether that version of Alex Eala was a temporary surge of brilliance or the beginning of a new standard. Bad Homburg may provide the answer sooner than anyone expected. What matters most about the Madrid match is the context in which it was played. Madrid was contested on clay, a surface that naturally gives Elise Mertens more time to organize her game. Mertens thrives when she has those extra fractions of a second. She reads patterns beautifully, positions herself intelligently, and turns rallies into tactical puzzles when she can set her feet and dictate terms. Grass changes that equation entirely.